Hi, welcome to Sounds with Tom Needham, the nation's longest running film, music, and culture show where we dive deep into the most compelling stories shaping our world. Today, we're honored to welcome the directing duo behind the Oscar nominated A Lien, Sam Cutler-Kreutz and David Cutler-Kreutz. Their gripping short film has stunned audiences with its raw, urgent storytelling, shedding light on the perilous realities of the U.S. immigration system. Sam, David, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, let me start off by congratulating the two of you on your Oscar nomination. How incredible is that?
Thank you. Yeah, it's very surreal. It's a film that we made with with our friends basically, for essentially no money. So it's crazy to see it, in this big arena, and it's super exciting. I think that the film is kind of meeting its moment in these times. So we're very happy that it's getting the recognition, and but also really the kind of conversation starter that it is.
Well, I want to talk about the film and everything related to that, but really quickly, can you just tell me a little bit about how you got the news about the Oscar nomination, what that was like?
Yeah, I think both of us, Sam and I, were, we always try to kind of keep it low key. And so we were both trying to sleep through it and just kind of like,
Oh, he left the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess what I'll say for myself is like I think what David is saying is yeah, we both sort of knew it was going to maybe be an announcement, and people had told us you got to stay up and listen to it, and I think both of us kind of felt like we kind of want to just not like play the waiting game and sort of see if we could sleep through it. And I will say we both had a bit of a fitful sleep that night, but it was I got shaken awake by my girlfriend at whatever 8:30 in the morning, telling it happened. So a very exciting morning. Lots of chaotic texts from all the people who love us. So it was great.
Tell me a little bit about the two of you and your filmmaking careers up until this point.
Yeah, of course. So obviously David and I are brothers, and we grew up together in a house with no TV. So we started making films as kids, with like a mini DV camera. I think a lot of people did, I think, but for us, it was definitely more an extension of the like the stories we'd tell each other versus kind of trying to copy what we were watching because we really didn't have anything to watch. And so, we spent a lot of time together in, behind our house in the woods in the neighborhood, walking around and, telling stories. And I think, that kind of like love of storytelling really sort of has grown into a career. We started working together as adults and, sort of strangely doing the same thing we did as kids, walking around together and either telling stories or discovering stories that we wanted to tell.
Was that something your parents instilled on you? No TV?
Yeah, it was something that they definitely pulled in our we're children of professors. Our mom's a lit professor and really into reading and really into reading out loud. They did a lot of reading out loud to us as kids, and I think a lot of that kind of like washed off on us, and that imaginary muscle that they built, by reading books and having us do a lot of reading, I think really has strangely enough helped our visual career because imagination is such a big piece of storytelling.
It's
Filmmaking.
unusual for two people to direct a film. Not unheard of, but especially unusual to have brothers direct a film. Tell me
Yeah.
about how the two of you work together, what your process is.
it feels so easy, and I feel so lucky to get to be in partnership with Sam. I mean, I think between both of us, like because we've been telling stories since we were kids, and it's like we spend so long getting to the same headspace, to really understand the story and to be able to just picture it together. That when we're actually on set, it feels like whoever you ask, you're going to get the same answer from either of us. We're just so aligned before we get on set.
But I think
So
I
yeah.
think also we have, in some ways, we do have different sets of skills. We have sort of complementing sets of skills, and I think it's also one of the great things that working with a partner of any kind, a brother or anyone else, is you can find somebody who can do the things that you can't do. And I think it almost allows us to cover more ground for that reason, because we both specialize in different areas, but also we have very similar tastes and have spent a lot of time together ahead of the shoot, prepping to make sure that we're totally aligned on everything.
How would you describe each of your major skills?
It's a good question. I think I come from a more technical background. I was a cinematographer before I was a director, and so a lot of it sort of like I know the camera side of the world better than David does probably. And
Mhm.
David spent more time, I think, from a kind of like personnel management perspective than I have. So he's is better, sort of a better organizer of people, and again, making a movie is very kind of like requires both technicality and organizational skills combined. And so, I think those are places that we sort of more specialize in. But from a writing and storytelling perspective, we're sort of, I think we kind of came to filmmaking together in that way, and a lot of our sort of writing experience and storytelling experience is very kind of like or is very similar and very in sync.
Can you tell me about the films that the two of you liked growing up and still like today?
Yeah, it's funny. I think our parents eventually, when we were got into like high school, they eventually like got a TV in the house, and they started off showing us their favorite films, and they became our sort of early touchstone films. And this is things that don't really apply necessarily to this film, but things we love, like the Marx Brothers, are early films that we grew up loving together. A lot of stuff. My mom's a huge Sidney Poitier fan, and
Ah,
so like she shows all those movies as really really young. In the Heat of the Night, Liz the Field, the whole slew of those films. Strange ones. I think maybe compared to what we're doing now, but I think films that really were early in our life. And then as we've grown together as filmmakers, we come to love just a really broad swath of films. We're huge, PTA fans. We're huge fans of like all the classics. I think we're, Parasite's a film we love.
yeah.
Jurassic Park is a film we love. We love The Master. We love, No Country for Old Men. Like, these are films that I'm sure everybody loves, but they're films that speak to us. We're big heist movie fans. We love Ocean's 11. We love, Tarkovsky. We're big fans of The Mirror and Stalker. Like, truly, like it's a broad swath of filmmaking for us.
Yeah, and then and then stuff like Miyazaki. It really does
Yeah,
range.
true.
Hmm.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about the evolution of this project. How did the idea come about?
Yeah, we ran into this like heard about this process in an article that we read in 2018, and I think it both just struck it struck both of us as just being immediately something that we were like, we need to engage on this. It just felt like we can't believe that this process happens in the U.S. Sam and I've been talking a lot about immigration in general, and we're talking about our own family history. And trying to just think about like how are we okay with this being a system that happens here in the U.S. And
Yeah,
how is this not talked about more?
yeah, and I think in general, one of the things that sort of like made this particular article ping us in our brains as like a thing that sort of made sense, both from a movie, like from a filmmaking perspective, is it's the sort of banal cruelty of it really struck us. The sort of the uncertainty, the waiting, the twisting of the rules,
Mm,
all things that I think are maybe less thought about, when you think about immigration. But I think some of the true heartbreak of the immigration process isn't the flash and the bang, but it's the kind of like slow torture of it. And I think
Yeah,
that really spoke not just to this particular process, but to the larger immigration uh, issues that we have in the country. And I think so. We thought this process strangely brought to light, a larger swath of the issues in some ways, even though it wasn't, yeah, it was just this piece.
For the listeners who have not seen the movie, which I highly recommend, by the way, um, can you tell us what the process is that you actually explore in the film, just so everyone knows what we're talking about?
Yeah,
totally.
yeah. So I mean, obviously, it's a super complex. It would take longer this entire segment to explain immigration system, to everyone. But the basic idea is essentially, ICE like has the ability to basically take people for deportation at their green card interviews that they're required to come to. That's the short.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an entrapment because you have to come into your interview to get your green card, but then you can also be deported at that same interview that you're required to go to.
Yeah, and oftentimes, people who are looking for green cards, who have been in the country a long time, have outstayed their sort of like official visa, even though their life is here in the U.S. And so, I see that as an opportunity to deport those people.
So it's very gripping, the scene in the airport that you're describing. Tell me a little bit stylistically what it was about the setting of this scene and the situation that you were covering that called for you to use certain film techniques in the manner that you did.
Yeah, so it's the film is set in a USCIS building, um, and which is where you would go to get to have your green card interview. Um, I think we wanted, at its core, the film really is kind of like it's like a documents horror film, you know?
Mm.
And so we were trying to figure out how do we, bring the stress of this process to an audience, you know, when essentially the film is it's sort of a documents case in some ways. And so I think, we were trying to work hard with our incredible cinematographer, Andrea Gavazzi, who's an absolute master. How do we really bring you into this headspace, these characters that are going through this process? And I think, one of the pieces of that was, this sort of more handheld camera, more of a documentary style of filmmaking. We use, the lenses get longer and longer and longer as the film goes on. These close-ups get tighter and tighter, and it really kind of like the claustrophobia that the characters are feeling is reflected by the camera movement and the, and the sort of like talent direction within the film. And I think, as these two characters feel the world closing in around them, so too do we close in on them with the camera and really kind of put you in their headspace.
You really do a remarkable job. You know, I think at this point, it's such a politically charged topic that a lot of people, have their positions. But I just felt more so than anything I've seen in a long time that this film has the potential to really make people from either side of the political spectrum just be able to identify with the people in the film, the actors, the people going through this experience that you described, and I really think it's due to your filmmaking. There's things that you can do with film that you just can't do through speeches or protests or news stories. Um, tell me about those things that you were really hoping to try and get across in this film. Um, that seemed to be getting across to people, especially with this nomination and fan reactions to this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, such a huge focus of this film is on family,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think we were so interested in saying, like, how do we move away, especially on a national level? There's so much talk about immigration through statistics, through numbers, through trying to understand, how many people are doing this or how many folks is this happening to, but I think it gets so easy, so easy to get lost um, from the human side, the family side, which is that at the end of the day, immigration is about people trying to be with their loved ones. It's about families trying to spend time with each other. It's about birthday parties and going to the grocery store and cooking dinner together. That's what it's all about. And I think for us, that was such a focus on the film to say, how do we really talk about this through the lens of people, and how do we really focus this in on families and on kids, and on husbands and wives, and because we think that's actually where this lives, that's where immigration lives.
Yeah, and I think, and to that perspective, I think filmmaking as a medium has the ability, unlike anything else in the history of the world, to be able to put you, the viewer, whoever you are, whatever your political beliefs may be, into the shoes of the main character. And if done, or the main characters, if done properly, you sort of built this empathy machine that you can really change people's perspectives with. And I think it's, we're not necessarily hoping that people will change their minds, but we just hope that people will be able to, you know, get into the headspace, into the shoes of someone's life that is not their own, and maybe, for a brief moment, feel what this person might feel. And I think that's the deep power of filmmaking, and it's one of the things that we not only are drawn to as filmmakers, but are trying to, do in some ways.
one of the things I liked about it is the film didn't feel preachy in any kind of way.
Hmm.
You definitely, I think, if you're human, you empathize with the main characters. How do you make a film that is engaging, that is about a serious topic? Maybe you want people to feel a certain way, but you don't want to come across as just like over the top preachy. That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to focus it on what matters. Nobody wants to be preached at. Nobody wants a message thrown in their face. And I think we've seen that time and time again, across the landscape, the political landscape in the last however many years. Nobody wants to be told that they're wrong or that the perspective is wrong. And I think it's really important to, when you're making a film, to focus it, on the it sounds sort of silly, but the narrative, on the story,
Hmm.
on the people, on the decision, the tough decisions that the characters have to go through, and their desires, their goals, and then how they're achieving them. Sort of basic filmmaking stuff, and the water that they're swimming around in. The setting. That's where the message can kind of be implanted. And so whatever the sort of scenario that they're in is, what you, the viewer, are gonna kind of like soak up, no matter like what happens in the film. So if you are with the characters and you're on their side and you're understanding their perspective and their decision making, and it feels logical and it feels, like what you would do as a viewer, you have the ability to then, by adjusting the world around them, whatever kind of like fish tank you drop them into, the scenery is what kind of gets soaked up in some ways. And so I think in this case, trying to make sure that the scenery around them was relatable, understandable, and charged with the right pieces that we needed to, to sort of talk about what we were trying to talk about, while simultaneously not overwhelming, I think was an important piece for us.
And I'd add in that, I think one of the things that Sam and I try really hard to do for, everyone, for instance, in this film who Sophie and Oscar interact with, to try and really make sure that the actors understand where they're coming at.
Hmm.
Like, so for instance, when we're working with the ICE agents, we're not saying you have an agenda here. We're saying, like, hey, this is your job. You're here to remove people. Someone says to you, hey, go to this spot and remove people. That's what you do. So, I think for us, trying to really hold everyone um, fairly in their position, and not say, oh, we're trying to, villainize one person or another, and just to say, hey, everyone here is just trying to do their job, and yet look at how this system is not is failing this family.
One of the things I was thinking about is you mentioned Paul Thomas Anderson, that you guys were big fans of.
Yeah, totally.
I'm curious, were there any scenes from any of his particular movies that um, inspired you a little bit for this particular film?
I mean, I think, I think there is some, not directly, I would say, is the answer, but I do think there is some parallel between parts of Punch Drunk Love in this film.
Hmm.
There's a kind of restless, roaming camera. I think there were times when we had, like, even our film has no score, but there are times, I think, when we tried like temping in bits of the John Bryan score from parts of Punch Drunk Love to see if that
Oh,
kind of
wow.
tempo would feel right. It didn't in the end, which is why we ended up going with sort of no score. But I think that kind of like offbeat, kind of relentless energy, I think, certainly was a piece of that. I mean, I think that's definitely, yeah, that's definitely, could be an influence here, though I don't know if it's directly one. In terms of other PTA films, um, yeah, maybe not directly in this. Though there are certain parts, I think, I mean, in Phantom Thread, there's sort of a genuine level of interaction between the two main characters that I think isn't a kind of a direct uh, reference, but certainly there are some moments there that we really respond to, and I think try to find um, moments where our two main characters could kind of be so genuinely kind of in love with each other, I think is really important for to make the story function in our film.
This topic of immigration right now is really, I mean, just all over the news, and it's pretty explosive. Do you have any concerns at all in terms of your film being added to the mix? with such a controversial topic at the moment?
Yeah, it's something we've certainly talked about. I think at the end of the day, like our feeling is that the film is tried to be rooted in families and people and
Yeah.
folks going through this process that so many people go through in this country. And it doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on. This is a process that we go through. And so, while it is political in this space right now, we're certainly we're advocating for uh, an immigration process that's humane and that's thoughtful of the people going through it. And we think that anyone can agree with that.
Tell me a little bit about what this Oscar nomination can mean to the two of you in terms of your careers.
Yeah, it's funny. I think when we think about it, we sort of see it as a marathon, and I think we're at mile 2, and we have, many, many more miles to run. And so I think in some ways, we're people who we kind of like to run. That's what we like to do. If people want to, stand on the sidelines of the marathon and clap and, wave flags and cheer, like that's lovely, and we're so appreciative of everyone's support. But I think truly in the end, like we're just guys who like to run, and so for us the journey is ahead of us, and where this allows us to do more of what we like to do, I think.
And what is the next thing that the two of you would like to do?
Yeah, we're currently working on our debut feature right now.
Can you give us any hint as to what it's about or anything?
Not yet, but it takes a nod from some of the shorts we've done, and I think I don't know, we think it's a really exciting story, and people are going to resonate with it. But yeah, that's all I can say at the moment.
This film is dealing with an important issue of our time. You mentioned you love the Marx Brothers and Jurassic Park and other filmmakers. What can we expect from you just in general in your career? Are you going to be filmmakers who make films about socially relevant themes all the time, or are there a variety of different types of movies that the two of you want to make?
Oh, that's a big one. I mean, we have lists and lists and lists of ideas. We're always finding new stories that inspire us. I think, we do think that our role, as artists is to, you know, be kind of in conversation with each other and with the world around us, and try to kind of crystallize, the what we're engaging with in the world, and crystallize that for the viewer. But I think, I don't know if all of our films will be so overtly political. Obviously, I don't think, I can't read the future, but I think we're always interested in themes that we think apply to us, or that we're thinking about. But certainly putting those into stories that are really varied in the space they live in.
Yeah, I think filmmaking in general, films that have resonance resonate because um, the topics or the themes, kind of reverberate in with the cultural zeitgeist. And so I think good films in general do that across the board. So our films will probably always have some themes that hit onto a current cultural zeitgeist, or a larger sort of class consciousness or whatever. But I think that's all good films have that. And so I think our desire to make films that resonate with people is sort of naturally in tune with that in some ways. But I think, yeah, like David said, our stories, we're hoping, we try as always to put the story first, and like make things that people can't take their eyes off of.
Is this the first time you guys are going to the Oscars or not?
Yeah, it's our first time. Very exciting.
Can you tell me, besides, obviously, I'm sure you're going to be waiting on the edge of your seat to hear who wins in your category, but anything else that you're looking forward to that night in particular?
I think for myself, it's funny. I don't feel so stressed about who's going to win the Oscars. I sort of feel like everybody wins by getting to go.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the fun has already happened. So honestly, I'm most excited to just be with the other short film nominees. I think we spent a lot of time with them over the last couple weeks on Zoom, working out the details of the theatrical release and various things like that. And I think it just seems like we have 3 or 5 really incredible films, and really 5 incredible teams of filmmakers. And so I'm excited to spend some time with them. And all of us have gone to the Oscars, I think, for the first time together. So it's kind of fun to be part of that group, that class, and get to kind of experience it as a team.
That's awesome. And if people want to see this movie, are there opportunities for people to see your film?
Yeah, you can find it online on Vimeo for free right now. So it's if you're in the U.S. and there'll be a theatrical release coming out on the 14th, and so it should be those would be the easiest places to see the film, as well as it's coming around the world and in a bunch of different places in the next couple weeks.
Well, Sam and David, I want to thank you so much for coming on the program, and congratulations again. I want everyone to check out A Lien, and I wish the best of you luck for that night. But I'm so excited to hear about your next project. Hopefully, we can speak again when the time is right. But man, great job.
Thanks, Tom.
We love that. Thanks so much, Tom.
And a pleasure being on the show.
Thank you. Take it easy, guys.
Bye.